Ravi had always dreamed of living close to nature. He had spent many years in the crowded city, surrounded by noise, traffic, and endless work. Every morning he woke up to the sound of horns, and every night he went to bed feeling tired. His heart wanted peace, something different, something that reminded him of his childhood days when he used to visit his grandfather's small wooden house in the countryside. That memory stayed in his mind like a soft song. One evening, while scrolling through a property website, Ravi found a listing that caught his attention. It said, "Abandoned mountain house for sale, Maple Ridge Road." The price was far lower than any normal property. The photos showed a 2-story wooden house covered in ivy and surrounded by tall pine trees. The paint was fading and the porch looked weak, but the view behind it was breathtaking. The caption said, "Needs repair. Great for quiet living." Something in Ravi's heart told him that this was the one. He read every line carefully, checked the location, and even searched for the history of the place. It had been owned by an old couple who passed away years ago, and since then, no one had lived there. The local council had left it abandoned, but all the papers were clear. Without wasting much time, Ravi took a few days off from work and drove to the mountains to see it himself. The road was long and curved between green valleys. Birds flew over his car and sunlight fell through the trees. After hours of driving, he reached a wooden gate covered with vines. On the gate, a small rusty board still read Maple Ridge. Ravi smiled. It looked lonely but peaceful. He opened the gate and drove inside. The house stood at the top of a small hill. It was old but strong. The roof had missing tiles and the windows were cracked, but the structure was still firm. Dust covered everything inside. The living room had old furniture, a broken clock, and a fireplace filled with ashes. In one corner, a family photo frame stood on a table covered in cobwebs. Ravi felt a strange connection. It was like the house was silently waiting for someone to care again. He walked around and imagined what it could become with a little effort. He took pictures, measured the rooms, and spent an hour just standing on the porch looking at the hills. The air was fresh and the sound of birds filled the silence. He decided right then that he would buy it. Within 2 weeks, all the papers were ready. The deal was done smoothly because there were no other buyers. Ravi signed the final documents and received the keys. It was officially his house now. He felt proud and excited. He started visiting every weekend to repair it. He brought cleaning supplies, tools, and some new furniture. The first few days were hard. The house was filled with dust, insects, and spider webs, but Ravi worked patiently. He swept the floors, repaired the broken stairs, and painted the walls in light colors. He fixed the windows and even planted flowers along the porch. Slowly, the house began to look alive again. He also met a few locals who lived nearby. Most of them were kind and helpful. One old man named Harish told him stories about the house. He said that people once used to gather there for small festivals, and that the place had a warm history. Ravi listened with interest and promised to restore its charm. At night, Ravi would light a lantern, sit on the porch, and drink tea. He would watch the stars above the trees and listen to the wind passing through the leaves. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. The mountain air made him forget the noise of the city. After nearly 2 months of hard work, the house was ready. The walls were painted, the kitchen was fixed, and the bedroom looked clean and bright. It was simple but beautiful. Ravi took pictures to show his friends. Everyone was surprised that he had done so much alone. Since his office had called him back for a project, Ravi decided to return to the city for a short time. He planned to come back soon to stay permanently. Before leaving, he made sure everything was safe. He changed the locks, closed all the windows, and placed a small wooden sign on the gate that said, "Private property, owned." He locked the gate and drove away, already missing the calm air of the hills. 3 weeks later, when his work was finished, he packed his bags and started his journey back to Maple Ridge. He was excited to see his home again. The road was the same, the air was clean, and the sky looked clear. As his car approached the hill, his heart filled with happiness. But when he reached the gate, his smile slowly disappeared. Something looked wrong. The gate, which he had locked carefully, now stood wide open. A new welcome mat was lying in front of the porch. Curtains were hanging inside the windows, and smoke was rising from the chimney. He stopped his car and stepped out quietly. He took his keys out of his pocket and went to the front door. When he tried to unlock it, his key didn't fit. Confused, he tried again, but it still wouldn't turn. Someone had changed the locks. His heartbeat grew faster. He knocked on the door firmly. After a few seconds, the door opened and a woman stood there. She was in her 40s with a firm expression on her face. Behind her, the smell of cooked food came from the kitchen. The house looked completely different from how he had left it. There were shoes near the entrance, toys scattered on the floor, and a dog barking softly inside. "Yes? Can I help you?" the woman asked. Ravi took a step back, trying to stay calm. "This is my house," he said. "I bought it 3 months ago." "Who are you?" The woman frowned slightly. "Your house?" she said in a surprised tone. "I think there's some mistake. We live here now." Before Ravi could reply, a man came from inside. He looked serious and suspicious. "What's going on?" he asked his wife. "This man says it's his house," she replied. The man crossed his arms. "That can't be true. We've been living here for weeks. We have the right papers from the local council." Ravi felt a wave of disbelief. "That's impossible," he said firmly. "I have all the legal documents. I bought this house properly." The man and woman exchanged looks. Behind them, 2 children peeked from the kitchen, whispering to each other. The dog barked again, making the tension stronger. Ravi took out his file of papers from his bag and tried to show them. But the man refused to look. "You should leave," he said coldly. "You're trespassing." Ravi's heart sank. He looked around at the house he had repaired with his own hands. The freshly painted walls, the furniture he had bought, and the garden he had planted, all of it was being used by strangers. He stepped back slowly, trying to control his anger. "I'm not leaving," he said. "This place belongs to me, and I will prove it." The woman gave a short laugh. "Good luck with that," she said, and closed the door firmly in his face. Ravi stood there for a long moment, staring at the door. The mountain wind blew around him, and the sound of the forest returned. He had no idea how a family had managed to take over his home in just 3 weeks. But one thing was clear. He was not going to give up. That night, he sat in his car at the edge of the property, watching the lights inside the house that once belonged to him. He didn't know what the next day would bring, but he promised himself that he would fight to get his home back. Ravi sat in his car that night, trying to understand what had happened. The house lights glowed faintly through the windows, showing the shadows of the family inside. It was painful to see strangers laughing and living in the place he had worked so hard to rebuild. He thought about all the hours he had spent painting the walls, fixing the roof, and repairing the windows. Every corner of that house carried his effort, his time, and his dreams. He waited for a long time, hoping the family would step outside so he could talk again, but they never did. Around midnight, he started the engine and drove down to the nearby village. There was only one small inn where travelers could stay. The caretaker, an old woman named Suman, gave him a room for the night. When she handed him the key, she noticed his worried face. "You look troubled, son. Is something wrong?" she asked kindly. Ravi sighed. "Someone has moved into my house, the one I bought a few months ago. I don't understand how it happened." The woman's eyes widened slightly. "You mean the old Maple Ridge house?" she asked. "Yes, that one," Ravi replied. She nodded slowly. "I heard a family from the town moved there recently. They said it was abandoned. People around here don't get involved much, but I thought someone already owned it." Ravi rubbed his forehead. "I have the documents, the receipts, everything. But they've changed the locks and won't listen to me." Suman looked concerned. "You should go to the local council office tomorrow. They handle property matters in this area. Maybe they can help." Ravi thanked her and promised he would do that first thing in the morning. That night he could not sleep properly. He kept imagining the family walking through his rooms, touching his things, and sitting on his furniture. The thought made him restless. The next morning he reached the small government office in the town. The building was old, and the paint on the walls had faded. Inside, a few officers were sitting behind wooden desks, sorting papers. Ravi approached one of them, a middle-aged man with glasses. His name tag read, "Mr. Mehta." "Good morning," Ravi said politely. "I need help with a property issue. I bought the Maple Ridge house legally a few months ago, but when I returned, a family had moved in and changed the locks." Mr. Mehta looked at him curiously. "Do you have your documents?" Ravi opened his file and handed over the purchase papers, the tax receipts, and the registration proof. Mr. Mehta read through each page carefully. After a few minutes, he looked up. "These papers seem genuine," he said. "You are the rightful owner. but we need to check if any new claim has been made on this property recently." He called another officer and asked him to bring the recent records. After some time, the officer returned with a small file. Mr. Mehta opened it and frowned. "Here," he said, showing Ravi the record. "A woman named Karen and her husband registered a temporary residence claim 2 weeks ago. They said the house was abandoned and unsafe, so they took shelter while waiting for approval to fix it." Ravi was shocked. "But that's false," he said. "It was not abandoned. I've been restoring it for months. I have pictures of the work I did." Mr. Mehta nodded. "Then you must submit those photos as proof. Also, you can file a written complaint. We will send an inspector to visit the property and verify your claim." Ravi felt a small sense of relief. Finally, there was a way to prove the truth. He thanked Mr. Mehta and spent the next few hours preparing the documents. He printed the photos showing the before and after of the repairs, the receipts for materials, and the copy of the deed. By afternoon, everything was ready. Mr. Mehta assured him that an inspector would visit the house the next morning. Ravi returned to the inn feeling hopeful. The next day, he accompanied the inspector to the property. As they approached, the same woman opened the door. She looked slightly annoyed. "What is it now?" she asked. The inspector stepped forward politely. "We are here to verify ownership of this property. Please cooperate." The woman frowned but let them inside. Ravi's heart tightened as he saw his furniture and decorations still in place. The curtains, table, and chairs were all his. The family had simply moved in and claimed everything. The inspector walked around, took notes, and asked questions. The man of the house, who introduced himself as Mr. Karen, tried to defend their presence. He said they had found the house empty with broken locks and thought it had been left by the council. Ravi interrupted. "That's a lie. I locked everything myself and even placed a private property sign at the gate." The inspector asked both sides to stay calm. After an hour of checking documents and taking photographs, he said, "I will submit my report to the office. The decision will be made soon." Ravi thanked him and followed him out. But as he walked to his car, the woman shouted from behind, "You can try all you want, but this place feels like ours now." "We won't leave easily," Ravi didn't answer. He simply drove back to the town. 3 days later, Mr. Mehta called him to the office. "The inspector confirmed your ownership," he said. "We have informed the local police to assist you in reclaiming your property. But please handle everything peacefully. The law will manage the rest." Ravi felt grateful. He went straight to the police station and spoke to the officer in charge. A small team accompanied him back to Maple Ridge. When they reached the house, the family was still there. The officer explained the situation firmly. "The property belongs to Mr. Ravi. You are living here without legal permission. You must vacate the house today." The woman's expression changed. She argued and tried to delay, saying they had nowhere to go. The man spoke loudly, but the police stayed calm. "You have 24 hours, the officer said. "If you don't leave, we will take legal action." Ravi stood quietly watching. He did not want to fight. He only wanted his house back. The family finally went inside without saying another word. The next morning, when Ravi returned, the gate was open. The car that used to stand in front of the house was gone. Inside, the rooms were half empty. A few broken items lay scattered on the floor. The family had left during the night. Ravi felt both relief and sadness. Some of his belongings were missing and the garden was trampled. The curtains were torn and one window was broken. But at least the house was his again. He spent the next few days cleaning and fixing everything once more. He replaced the locks, repaired the damage, and made the place look peaceful again. But he couldn't forget what had happened. He wondered how easily someone could take over a home without permission. A week later, Mr. Mehta called him again. "The family who claimed your house has been fined for illegal occupation," he said. "But be careful. Sometimes people like them don't accept defeat easily." Ravi thanked him and promised to stay alert. One evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sunset, he heard a sound near the gate. He got up and walked over. A small piece of paper was lying there. It had a few words written in untidy handwriting. It said, "This isn't over." Ravi looked around. The road was empty and the forest was silent. He folded the paper and kept it in his pocket. Deep down, he knew the trouble might not be finished yet. But he also knew one thing. He would not let anyone take away the home he had built with his own hands again. Ravi tried to move on after the incident with the family. For several weeks, life at Maple Ridge slowly began to feel peaceful again. He repaired the damage they had left behind, replaced the curtains, and bought a few new things for the kitchen and bedroom. Every morning he opened the windows to let the sunlight in, and every evening he sat on the porch listening to the soft wind that passed through the trees. The mountain air was calm, and the silence returned. Still, there was something that didn't feel quite right. Some nights, Ravi would hear faint noises from outside, like footsteps on the gravel or whispers near the gate. When he went out to check, no one was there. He told himself it was probably animals or the sound of wind through the branches, but in his heart, a small worry stayed. One afternoon, Ravi went into town to buy groceries. The shopkeeper, a friendly man named Deepak, greeted him warmly. "How's life up there in the mountains, sir?" he asked while weighing some vegetables. Ravi smiled lightly. "Peaceful for now," he said, "though sometimes it feels like someone still watches the house." Deepak raised his eyebrows. "You mean the people who used to live there? The ones the police removed?" "Yes," Ravi said. "Them. I found a note at my gate the day after they left. It said something strange, like they weren't done yet." Deepak's smile faded. "That woman Karen, she's been seen around town again. Some people said she's been asking questions about that house. Maybe she's not ready to let it go." Ravi frowned. "But why would she care? She doesn't own it." Deepak shrugged. "Some people just can't accept the truth. Be careful. That family didn't have a good reputation even before this. They've argued with locals before over land and money." Ravi nodded, thanked him, and left with his bags. The words kept echoing in his mind during the drive back. As he reached the hill, the wind picked up and the sky turned cloudy. When he parked near the gate, he noticed something strange again. The wooden sign that read "Private Property Owned" was lying on the ground. It looked as if someone had pulled it off. He bent down, picked it up, and fixed it back in place. He looked around carefully. The forest was quiet and no one was there, but he could not shake off the feeling that he was being watched. That night, Ravi made sure all the windows were locked. He checked the doors twice and turned on the small porch light. Then he sat by the fireplace reading an old book. Around midnight, a soft thud came from the back of the house. He froze. He waited a few seconds, listening. Another sound followed, this time closer to the window. Slowly, he got up, took a flashlight, and walked toward the noise. The sound stopped. He pulled back the curtain and shone the light outside. Nothing, just trees swaying gently in the wind. He sighed and went back to his chair. But when he sat down, he noticed something on the floor near the door. It was a small stone with a piece of folded paper tied to it. He picked it up carefully and opened the note. It had the same messy handwriting as before. The words said, "We were here first." Ravi's heart beat faster. He looked outside again but saw no one. He closed the door firmly and stayed awake until morning. The next day he went to the local police station and met Officer Raj, the same man who had helped him before. Ravi showed him the note and explained everything. Officer Raj read it and nodded. "It seems they're trying to scare you," he said. "But don't worry. We'll keep an eye on the area. I'll send a constable to patrol near your property at night." Ravi thanked him and returned home feeling a bit safer. True to the officer's word, a police jeep drove by the house that night. The lights flashed once near the gate, then disappeared down the road. Ravi felt comforted and managed to sleep peacefully for the first time in days. The next few days went smoothly. He worked on small repairs around the garden, painted the fence, and even began writing short stories about mountain life. He wanted to turn his experience into something meaningful, but peace didn't last long. One evening, while watering the plants, he noticed footprints in the mud near the back wall. They were fresh, leading from the woods to the corner of his house. He followed them cautiously, but they ended near the tool shed. Inside, a few of his tools were scattered on the floor, as if someone had searched through them. He locked the shed and returned inside quickly. The memory of the note came back to him. It was no longer just a warning. Someone had clearly been there. That night, Ravi decided to install a few motion lights around the house. He went into town the next morning, bought the equipment, and spent the afternoon setting them up. When he finished, the place felt more secure. The lights worked well for 2 nights, switching on whenever animals passed by. But on the third night, something different happened. Around 1 in the morning, Ravi woke up to the sound of one light turning on, then another, then another. They lit up in a sequence as if someone was walking around the house. He stood near the window looking out. The lights flickered near the trees, but no figure was visible. He waited for several minutes before the yard fell dark again. He barely slept after that. In the morning, he went outside to check the area. Near the fence, he found a small piece of torn fabric caught on a nail. It looked like part of a jacket. That confirmed it for him. Someone had been there. He took the fabric to Officer Raj, who listened carefully and promised to investigate. "We'll check if anyone in town has been causing trouble again," the officer said. Later that week, a villager came to visit Ravi. It was Harish, the old man who had told him stories about the house before. He looked worried. "Ravi," he said, "I heard something you should know. The family who tried to take your house has been staying in an old cabin near the river. People saw them there recently. They've been talking about the property again." Ravi frowned. "What are they planning now?" "I don't know," Harish said. "But please stay cautious. They might come back." Ravi thanked him and promised to stay careful. That evening, he walked around the house once more, checking every lock and window. The forest was quiet, but the quiet felt heavier than usual. The air was thick, and even the birds seemed silent. He went inside and tried to distract himself with work. Hours passed slowly. The clock struck 11 and then 12. Just when he thought the night would pass peacefully, he heard a sudden loud bang at the back door. Ravi jumped up, heart racing. He ran to the door and shouted, "Who's there?" But no voice answered. Instead, another sound came from the side window. A faint knock, slow and deliberate. He grabbed his flashlight and turned it on. The beam cut through the darkness outside, landing on the bushes near the porch. For a split second, he thought he saw a figure moving away, but it vanished into the shadows before he could be sure. The next morning, he found muddy footprints near the back steps again. This time there were more of them, as if 2 or 3 people had walked there during the night. He knew then that this wasn't random. Someone was watching him closely, maybe even waiting for the right moment. He locked every door and called the police again. Officer Raj assured him that they were on alert and would visit that evening. Ravi felt uneasy but determined. He had fought too hard for this house to lose it again. As the sun went down, he sat on the porch, eyes fixed on the road below. The golden light of dusk fell on the mountains and the air turned cold. The place was beautiful, but the peace it once offered now felt uncertain. He didn't know what the next night would bring, but he could sense that the real struggle for Maple Ridge was only beginning. The next evening came faster than Ravi expected. The sky was orange, and the forest behind his house glowed with the last light of the sun. The wind was calm, but he could feel something strange in the air. It was not fear exactly, but an uneasy silence that made him look over his shoulder every few minutes. Ravi sat on the porch with a cup of tea in his hand. He kept his phone beside him in case he needed to call Officer Raj. The memory of the previous night still played in his mind. The noise, the moving lights, and the shadow he thought he had seen. He hoped it was only his imagination, but deep inside, he knew it was not. As darkness spread, the sound of crickets filled the air. The motion lights around the house flickered once, then stayed on for a few seconds before turning off. Ravi watched carefully. He had placed the lights in all corners, near the fence and behind the tool shed. If anyone came near, he would know immediately. Around 9, he went inside to check the windows. The rooms were quiet. The fire burned low in the fireplace, and the wind whispered softly against the walls. He walked into the kitchen to put away his dishes. Suddenly, a sharp knock came at the front door. It was quick and heavy, like someone striking with a closed fist. Ravi froze. His heart started to beat faster. The knock came again. He took a deep breath and walked toward the door. "Who is it?" he called out. There was no answer, only silence. He opened the door slowly, keeping his flashlight ready. No one stood there. The porch was empty, and the road beyond the gate looked quiet. He stepped out and scanned the area with his light. Nothing moved except the trees. He checked the gate. It was still locked. When he turned back toward the door, something caught his eye. A small envelope lay on the porch floor. It was white, slightly wet from the evening mist. He picked it up carefully and took it inside. The envelope had no name or address written on it. Inside was a single piece of paper. It said, "Leave before it's too late." Ravi felt a cold wave run through him. He placed the note on the table and sat down. His mind raced with questions. Who had come to his door without being seen? How did they get close enough to leave the envelope without triggering the lights? He called Officer Raj immediately and told him everything. The officer promised to come early the next morning with his team. "Keep your doors locked tonight," he said firmly. We'll handle it, Ravi agreed. He locked every door and window again. He sat near the fireplace for hours, listening to every sound the night made. Around midnight, he heard a faint movement near the window. It was soft, like someone brushing against the wall. He shone his flashlight toward the sound, but there was nothing visible. The motion lights outside did not turn on either. The next morning, the police arrived as promised. They checked the house and the area around it. One officer found fresh footprints near the shed and tire marks on the dirt road outside the gate. "These tracks are new," Officer Raj said. "Whoever is doing this came here last night. They may be trying to frighten you." Ravi looked at the ground where the tracks ended. "They already have," he said quietly. "But I'm not leaving." "This house is mine," Officer Raj nodded. "We'll increase the patrols in this area. Also, it would be wise to install a few cameras. If they return, we will have proof." Ravi agreed and went to the town to buy cameras and a small monitor. By evening, everything was installed. One camera faced the gate, another covered the backyard, and one was fixed near the porch. Now he could watch every side of the property from inside his living room. For 2 nights, nothing unusual happened. Ravi began to feel a little safer. He started painting again, trying to bring back the peace he had lost. The garden bloomed beautifully and the mountain wind felt softer. But peace was never meant to last long at Maple Ridge. On the 3rd night, around 2 in the morning, Ravi woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing. The camera app on his phone had sent an alert. It said, "Movement detected near the backyard." He jumped out of bed and opened the live feed. The screen showed a dark figure standing near the fence. It was too far to see clearly, but the person was tall and still. The figure stood there for almost a minute, not moving at all, and then slowly disappeared into the woods. Ravi called the police again and reported what he saw. They told him to stay inside and wait until morning. He did not sleep after that. Every creak of the house made him alert. He kept checking the cameras again and again. When dawn came, he walked outside carefully. The backyard had deep footprints in the mud, and one of the wooden planks on the fence had been pushed aside. It looked like someone had tried to make an opening to enter. Ravi fixed it immediately and made the fence stronger by adding extra nails. He also placed some noise traps using small tins filled with stones near the wall, so if anyone tried to enter again, the sound would wake him up. Later that day, Harish came to visit again. The old man brought some fruits from his garden and sat with Ravi on the porch. "You look tired," Harish said gently. "You need rest, my boy." Ravi smiled weakly. "Rest is hard when someone is trying to scare you every night." Harish nodded. "I spoke to a few people in the town. That family is still angry. They believe they were wronged. The woman has been telling others that the house once belonged to her distant relative. She says she deserves to live here." Ravi frowned. "But that's not true. I have every legal paper." "I know," Harish said. "The law is on your side. But sometimes people don't accept what is right. They let pride and jealousy blind them." Ravi thanked him for the advice. The old man left before sunset, reminding him again to stay cautious. That night was quiet for a long time. Ravi checked the cameras before going to bed. Everything seemed normal. But around 3, a sound of breaking glass jolted him awake. He ran to the living room and found one of the side windows shattered. The curtains fluttered with the cold air. He quickly turned on the lights and grabbed his phone. He looked at the camera feed again. The gate camera showed a car parked halfway down the road. It was a dark-colored vehicle and 2 figures were visible near it. They were running toward the trees. Ravi called the police again. Within 30 minutes, a jeep arrived. The officers checked the area, but the intruders were already gone. They found shoe prints and broken glass pieces on the ground. "It seems they tried to enter but got scared when you turned on the lights," Officer Raj said. "They must have run away immediately." Ravi looked at the broken window and sighed. "They won't stop until something serious happens." The officer placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry. We'll catch them. We already have your camera recordings. They will help us identify the people." The police took the video footage and promised to contact him soon. Ravi cleaned the glass and covered the window with a wooden board. When the officers left, he sat quietly for a long time, staring at the dark forest beyond his gate. He knew now that whoever was trying to scare him was not going to stop. The warning notes, the strange noises, and now the broken window, all of it was part of a plan to push him away. But Ravi had made up his mind. He was not going anywhere. Maple Ridge was his home, and he would protect it no matter what. As the morning light touched the hills, he looked around at the house he had built with his own hands and whispered to himself, "This is not their story anymore. It's mine." He did not know that the next few nights would test his courage more than ever before. The next few days passed in tense silence. The police had increased patrols around the area, but no one had been caught. Ravi spent most of his time fixing broken things and checking the cameras every few hours. He hardly slept, and his eyes carried the weight of worry. The once peaceful mountain house now felt like a place of constant waiting. One morning, as he walked outside to water the plants, he noticed something strange near the mailbox. The soil around it was freshly disturbed, as if someone had dug there during the night. He used a small shovel to check, and within a few minutes he found a small metal box buried under the dirt. Inside it was an old photo of the house and a letter written in messy handwriting. The letter said, "This land is ours. You cannot take it away." Ravi stood silently for a while. The photo looked like it was taken many years ago. The house in the picture was newer, and there were people standing in front of it, a man, a woman, and 2 children. Their faces were not clear, but the woman looked a lot like Karen. It was now clear to him that her family had some old connection to this land. He took the box inside and called Officer Raj again. The officer came later that day and took the photo and letter for evidence. "This shows intent," Raj said. "We will check the old property records. Maybe this family lived here decades ago and lost the place in a sale or debt. But even if they did, that does not give them the right to threaten you." Ravi thanked him and tried to focus on his normal routine. He painted during the day, cleaned the garden, and made small repairs. The mountain wind was cool and fresh, and for a few days everything seemed calm again. But deep in his heart, Ravi knew the peace would not last. On the 5th night after the window incident, heavy rain started. The sky was full of thunder, and flashes of lightning lit the forest like daylight for a few seconds at a time. Ravi sat near the fireplace, sipping tea, watching the fire dance. The wind howled outside, shaking the windows. He almost thought of sleeping early when the power suddenly went off. The whole house turned dark except for the light from the fire. Ravi took his flashlight and checked the fuse box, but everything was in place. It was not a simple power cut. Something else had happened. Just then he heard a faint knock on the back door. It was slow and steady, like someone tapping softly. He held his breath and walked quietly toward it. "Who is there?" he asked. No answer came. The knocking stopped. He switched on his phone's flashlight and pointed it at the door. For a second he saw the shadow of a person moving outside the glass. His heart started beating faster. He stepped back, grabbed the phone, and opened the camera app. The backyard camera was still working on battery. On the screen he saw 2 figures near the fence trying to climb over. Ravi called Officer Raj at once. The officer picked up quickly. "Stay inside," he ordered. "We are on our way. Do not open the door." Ravi locked the back door tightly and moved to the living room. He could hear movement outside, the sound of footsteps and the crunch of gravel. The front porch light, which was on a separate battery, flickered once and then went out. He heard whispering voices. Suddenly the sound of glass breaking came again, this time from the small window near the kitchen. Ravi rushed there and saw a hand trying to reach through the broken glass to unlock the latch. Without thinking, he slammed the window shut and held it down. The hand pulled back quickly, and he heard a woman's angry voice shouting something he could not understand through the rain. He ran to the living room, his heart pounding. Then he remembered the small alarm switch he had installed near the door. He pressed it, and a loud siren started ringing across the property. The noise echoed through the mountains, mixing with the storm. The intruders must have realized the police were on their way, because the sounds outside stopped suddenly. Within 20 minutes, flashing blue lights appeared down the road. The police arrived and began checking the area. They found tire marks again near the gate, but this time they also found a scarf stuck to the fence. It looked familiar. It belonged to Karen's daughter, who had come with her family the first day Ravi moved in. Officer Raj turned to Ravi. "This time we have solid proof. They came here themselves. We will take care of this." The police searched the nearby woods and found an old camp setup where someone had been staying for a few days. There were blankets, empty food cans, and a small tent. It seemed that Karen's family had been watching Ravi's house for a long time, waiting for a chance to scare him away. By morning, The police returned with news that the family had been caught while trying to drive down the hill road. They were taken to the station for questioning. Ravi finally felt like a heavy weight had been lifted from his chest. He thanked the officers again and again. Over the next few days, life at Maple Ridge slowly returned to normal. The power was fixed, the windows repaired, and the cameras worked perfectly. Ravi spent long hours sitting on the porch watching the sun rise over the green hills. He had almost forgotten what peace felt like. One afternoon, Harish visited again, bringing some fresh fruits and a warm smile. "So it is finally over," he said happily. Ravi nodded. "Yes, I think it is." The police said they confessed. They wanted to take the house because they believed it once belonged to their great-uncle. But they had no proof. Harish looked around the garden and smiled. "You handled this with patience and courage. Most people would have left long ago." Ravi smiled softly. "This house gave me peace when I needed it. I could not just walk away. Maybe that is what made me strong." Harish patted his shoulder. "You have done well, my friend. The mountains test those who come here. You have passed your test." Days turned into weeks. The mountain house began to feel alive again. Birds sang in the mornings. The air smelled fresh and the wooden walls no longer echoed with fear. Ravi started working on a new painting, a picture of the mountain view at sunrise full of light and calm. It was his way of capturing the peace he had fought for. One evening, as the sky turned golden, Ravi walked down to the edge of the forest. The rain had washed the ground clean and everything looked bright and green. He found the spot where the old camp used to be. It was empty now, only the marks of footsteps slowly fading away. He stood there for a long time, listening to the quiet wind. When he returned to the porch, he looked at the house again. The windows glowed with warm light, and smoke rose gently from the chimney. It looked peaceful, just as he had imagined it the day he bought it. He sat down, feeling the cool air brush against his face. The mountains stretched far and wide before him, silent and beautiful. He knew that life here would still have challenges, but he was ready for them. The house was not just wood and stone anymore. It was a symbol of strength, patience, and courage. As the stars appeared one by one, Ravi smiled. The fear was gone. The past was gone. Only peace remained. The mountain night was quiet again. The house stood tall, safe, and bright against the dark hills, finally home to the man who refused to give up.